السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد سيد السادات ومنبع الكمالات وباب الهدايات وكنز العنايات وبحر الإفادات ومظهر السادات وسلم الرقايات وعين الخيرات وعلى آله وأصحابه والتابعين لهم في كل الحالات. واجعلنا يا رب من المقبولين عنده والمقربين لديه والعارفين به، إنك سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات. ونسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يرزقنا حسن النية. We ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to grant us all the sincere intentions. This is session 7 in the book written by Al-Hafiz Ibn al-Jawzi, Sayd al-Khatir, Capturing Thoughts. In this following chapter, he speaks about one of the grave schemes and deceptions of the devil. حيل الشيطان ومكره, the schemes and the deception of shaitan. قال ابن الجوزي رحمه الله: رأيت من أعظم حيل الشيطان ومكره أن يحيط أرباب الأموال بالآمال. I observed that one of the greatest tricks and deceptions of shaitan is that he surrounds the wealthy people with long hopes. So he surrounds the owners of a lot of wealth with hope of things in the future, of pleasurable matters, of things they can buy, things they can achieve, prosperity that can occur for them, worldly prosperity. رأيت من أعظم حيل الشيطان ومكره أن يحيط أرباب الأموال بالآمال، يعني بالأمل، بالآمال والتشاغل بالذات القاطعة، والتشاغل باللذات القاطعة عن الآخرة وأعمالها. And he surrounds the wealthy people, he distracts them, he whispers to them about the pleasures that cut them off from the hereafter and the good deeds. So he whispers to those people things that distract them from the hereafter and things that distract them from doing the good deeds. Subhanallah, being poor and not having a lot of possessions, it can be a blessing in disguise for those that are patient. One of the greatest examples of that is Sayyiduna Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu. He was poor and he could not find food, such that he would faint, and the children would come and kick him, thinking that he has lost his mind. But he said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, يظنون بي يظنون بي الجنون وما بي إلا الجوع. They think that I'm crazy. They think that I come and go, I pass out and I come to because I'm insane. وما بي إلا الجوع. Rather, the reason I'm like this, the reason I pass out is because of hunger. And Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, because he was poor, he spent the most time with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He acquired many knowledges, many details, many wisdoms, many blessings that many others did not acquire. Had someone in that scenario had a lot of money and they didn't fear Allah in their money and they let it overcome them, they could have wasted a lot of time. But Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, you see his name again and again and again and again. An Abi Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, narrated on the authority of Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, and so on. He is the companion that narrated the most hadiths of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. He said himself, when he was asked about this, he said, the companions of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam would come to his masjid and they would sit with him. They would hear from him. They would ask him. They would get their answers. And things were good. They were acquiring knowledge. But then they would leave the masjid. They would go home. They would go to their farms. They would go to their markets. They would trade. And they would take care of their families. And as for me, I would stay with the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wassalam. He said, what I have narrated, what I have relayed to you is only a part of what I learned from the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wassalam. A person who does not know how to use their wealth responsibly can waste a lot of time. Nowadays, many youngsters, instead of using their nights to worship Allah, to review Islamic knowledge, to recite Quran, and so on, to pray perhaps the optional prayers, they spend their time on social media. Or they spend time watching films or shows. You think for a moment, had they not had this, let's say this internet connection or data or all these things that are distractions, that are addictive, if they did not have these, do you remember perhaps when sometimes, I'll speak for the UK, when there was a power cut, sometimes for a few hours, and we'd have to go and get the candles out. In the night, we'd have to get the candles out. And people would sit and we'd tell stories. This was a kind of reset. And still today, if this happens, it's a little different now. If the power goes out, there's still battery on the phone. It's still charged. There probably still is data. Even if the Wi-Fi goes out, there's still data. So you'd see people on their Instagram feed, people on their Facebook, people on TikTok, people on YouTube Shorts. Think about how many people could have memorized the 30th part of the Quran if it wasn't for these distractions. How do these distractions appear? Money. Money. Money can be used in a responsible way. Of course, a person can use the money that they have, they can use the tools, they can use technology in a beneficial way. But these are a huge distraction. Why is it that we do not see scholars graduating? Why is it that there are not many scholars? Because most people do not direct their children towards that. Most people give their children phones when they're very young. Ibn al-Jawzi said, I observed that one of the greatest tricks and deceptions of the shaitan is that he surrounded the wealthy with long hopes and distracted them with pleasures that cut them off from the hereafter and its deeds. Imagine a person memorized one line, one verse of the Quran every single night. Pennies make pounds, and pebbles, they form mountains. It's about consistency. This is what the Prophet ﷺ taught us. One of the companions observed that the Prophet ﷺ, what was beloved to him was the deed or the deeds were the deeds that even if they were little, but they were constant, they were consistent. Ibn al-Jawzi said, رأيت من أعظم حيل الشيطان ومكره أن يحيط أرباب الأموال بالآمال والتشاغل باللذات القاطعة عن الآخرة وأعمالها فإذا فإذا شغلهم بالمال تحريضا على جمعه وحثا على تحصيله أمرهم بحراسته بخلا به فذلك من متين حيله وقوي مكره. So he said once he cuts them off that which leads to victory in the hereafter and cuts them off those deeds as he's diverted them from that path by urging them to collect it, to collect money, and encouraging them to acquire more. He then commands them to guard it. He then commands them to guard it bishiddah. Stirring in stirring in them miserliness. He injects being stingy, being tight-fisted into them. So first, he cuts people off from that which leads to prosperity in the hereafter and success. And he distracts them and he encourages them to acquire more money, more money, more money, more wealth. And then once they have it, he commands them to guard it very tightly, protect it, stirring in them, injecting them with miserliness, stinginess, bukhul. So for the devil, it's like a game of chess. He thinks 3 or 4 moves ahead. And the devils have been doing this for a long time. So although it's very, very superficial, it's very simple, this deception, but it works on most people. Ibn al-Jawzi said, فذلك من متين حيله وقوي مكره. This is among his strongest schemes and most powerful tricks. Ibn al-Jawzi, Abu al-Faraj, Abdul Rahman al-Hanbali, he said ثم دفن في هذا الأمر من دقائق الحيل الخفية أن خوف من جمعه المؤمنين فنفر طالب فنفر طالب الآخرة أو نفر طالب الآخرة منه وبادر التائب وبادر التائب يخرج ما في يده. He said, then buried within this matter of money is a subtle hidden deception. The devil instills fear of wealth into the hearts of believers. So the seeker of the hereafter becomes repelled by it. And the repentant person rushes to get rid of it, rushes to get rid of whatever he has. This is very interesting. Ibn al-Jawzi is not encouraging people to gain wealth for sinful purposes. He is not saying that a person should have an incessant desire to earn lots of money for the fulfillment of worldly pleasures and desires. He's not saying that. He's saying that in what the devil does, there is a subtle hidden deception, which is that he instills fear of wealth, being rich, into the hearts of believers. He's going to expand upon that. For that reason, the one that seeks the hereafter, he can actually, if he is not intelligent, he can actually, to his detriment, cause harm to himself. If he is afraid of wealth. Ibn al-Jawzi said, ولا يزال الشيطان يحرضه على الزهد ويأمره بالترك ويخوفه من طرقات الكسب إظهارا لنصحه وحفظ دينه وفي خفايا ذلك عجائب من مكره. And the devil continues to incite this person towards a zuhud. Detach yourself from the world completely. Leave this, leave that. Be an ascetic. He commands him to abandon the worldly matters and frightens him from the path of earning a living. As though he's saying, don't earn a living, otherwise you will fall in love with money. وَتُفْتَحُ لَكَ الدُّنْيَا عَلَى مَصْرَعِهَا. And the world will open up to you, like two doors, open up, welcoming whoever wants to enter. Don't be like that. You'll fall in love with the world. وَحُبُّ الدُّنْيَا رَأْسُ كُلِّ خَطِيئَةٍ. And love for the world, it is the pinnacle. It is the one of the main matters that cause people to become destroyed. He frightens these people from the path of earning a living. And he appears to advise this person to protect his religion. While hidden within this are wonders from his deception, or ajaib. Sometimes the devil does that. The devil says, do this matter, which may seem like a good matter, but he's doing that, using it as a stepping stone to something else. Before I read on, I'll give you an example. Imagine a person who is intelligent. This person is a genius. He or she, let's say it's a woman. She's a genius and she has a drive to learn the Islamic knowledge and to teach the Islamic knowledge, to spread al-Islam. The devil comes to her and may say to her or to him, detach yourself from the world completely. So this person completely detaches themselves from the world and from earning a living. Because for high ranking awliya, yes, they will detach themselves from the world. But this would not happen for everybody. So if this person right now detaches themselves from the world, how long will they last? Then they will find later on that this desire, this fire, this incentive that they had, this drive that they had to learn, to author, to produce Islamic material, even, let's say, give it a bit of time and they will splutter out. Why? Because they don't have any money. Ibn al-Jawzi will give that example now. This is what he is alluding towards. ولا يزال الشيطان يحرضه في الزهد ويأمره بالترك ويخوفه من طرقات الكسب إظهارا للنصح وحفظ دينه وفي خفايا ذلك عجائب. And the devil continues to incite him towards being ascetic, being detached from the world, commanding him to abandon the world, leave everything, and frightening him from the path of earning a living, as though he's saying, don't you dare earn a living. Appearing to advise him and appearing to to be protective of his religion, as though he's saying, I'm helping you here. While hidden in that, there are wonders, shocking matters. Ibn al-Jawzi said, وربما تكلم الشيطان على لسان بعض المشايخ الذين يقتدي بهم التائب. Ibn al-Jawzi has a book known as تلبيس إبليس, which means the conjurings of Iblis, the trickery, the deception of Iblis, or the deceptions of Iblis. And in it, Ibn al-Jawzi, he really, you could say, he really lays into the people that he saw who weren't real Sufiya, but they were mutasawwifa, like to say fake Sufis. And they would tell their students things and make them do certain things that were very unorthodox. So Ibn al-Jawzi did not stay quiet on them, but he unleashed upon them his very, very strong words. Just so you get an idea of, wait a second, Ibn al-Jawzi speaking about some of the religious, um, um, the teachers or guides or Sufiya. No, he's targeting those mutasawwifa. Al-mutasawwifa, the fake Sufis. He said, وَرُبَّمَا تَكَلَّمَ الشَّيْطَانُ عَلَى لِسَانِ بَعْضِ الْمَشَايِخِ الَّذِينَ يَقْتَدِي بِهِمُ التَّائِبِ. He said, and perhaps the devil may even speak through the tongue of certain sheikhs, whom the repentant person follows. فيقول له اخرج من مالك وادخل في زمرة الزهاد. And says to him, Give up all of your wealth. He's going to mention, by the way, our master Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu. So he's going to mention that. Give up all of your wealth. Join the ranks of the ascetics, those that distance themselves completely from the worldly matters. And they say things like, وَمَتَى كَانَ لَكَ غَدَاءٌ أَوْ عَشَاءٌ فَلَسْتَ مِنْ أَهْلِ الزُّهُدِ. And they say to him things like, if you ever have lunch or dinner, then you are not from among the ascetic people. وَلَا تَنَالُ مَرَاتِبَ الْعَزْمِ. And you will not reach the ranks of spiritual resolve. وربما كرر عليه الأحاديث البعيدة عن الصحة والواردة على سبب ولمعنى. He may even repeat weak or fabricated hadiths, those that are either unsound or they are connected to specific contexts. They were mentioned in specific contexts. فإذا أخرج ما في يده وتعطل عن مكاسبه عاد يعلق طمعه بصلة الإخوان أو يحسن عنده صحبة السلطان لأنه لا يقوى على طريق الزهد والترك إلا أياما ثم يعود الطبع فيتقاضى مطلوباته فيقع في أقبح مما فر منه ويبذل أول السلع في التحصيل دينه وعرضه ويصير متمندلا به ويقف في مقام اليد السفلى. After some of these fake Sufis, they tell him all of these. And by the way, for example, Muhammad bin Karram, who studied a little or heard from Al-Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, radiyallahu anhu, Muhammad ibn al-Karram, he was a deviant. He was a kafir. Muhammad bin Karram would appear as an ascetic, a zahid, someone who was detached from the world. He would eat little, sleep little. He was very thin. He looked very humble. He wore clothes that had tears in them or patches in them. Muhammad ibn Karram. But he had perhaps 30,000 mujassima with him. He was a mujassim. He likened Allah to the creation. Muhammad bin Karram in Baghdad. People were drawn towards him because of how detached he was from the world. Anyway, so some of these so-called Sufis, al-mutasawwifa, al-mutasawwif. You have a Sufi and then you have a mutasawwif, someone who hijacks the name. They say, or the devil says on their tongue, give up all of your wealth, join the ranks of the ascetics. If you have lunch or dinner, you are not truly ascetic, and you will not reach the high ranks. He may even use weak hadiths or fabricated hadith and so on, until this person gives up what he has, ما في يده, he gives up what he has and stops earning a living. Then the devil redirects his hopes, redirects this person's hopes. So you don't earn a living? You know what? Your brothers and sisters, they should provide for you. They should provide for you. So he has this hope now, this reliance on his brothers and sisters, his Muslim brothers and sisters. Or he whispers to him, to make companionship with the rulers because the rulers are rich. He makes these matters appealing to him. Ibn al-Jawzi said, but he cannot remain on the path of asceticism except for a few days. It's like to say a bit of hunger fixes him up. Then his nature returns to him and begins demanding its needs. So he ends up falling into a worse state than the one he had escaped from. So he sells his religion. Or he falls into sin, or he becomes a kafir. But here it's likely Ibn al-Jawzi meant that he sells his religion and he commits sins. So he sells his religion and dignity as his first price to earn money. Ibn al-Jawzi said, وَيَصِيرُ مُتَمَنْدَلًا. He becomes like a floor cloth that others use and stands in the position of al-yadu sufla, which is the lower hand, asking people for money. Being poor is not a sin, of course. And if a person was actually poor, they didn't have their basic needs, then they can religiously beg. Ibn al-Jawzi said, لو أنه ولو أنه نظر في سير الرجال ونبلائهم. Only if only he had studied the lives of the great men and noble figures, وتأمل صحاح الأحاديث عن رؤسائهم, and only if he had reflected on the authentic hadiths concerning their leaders, لعلم أن الخليل عليه الصلاة والسلام كان كثير المال حتى ضاقت بلدته بمواشيه. If he had only studied the lives of the great men and looked into the Sahih Hadiths, he would have found that Ibrahim alayhi salam, Al-Khalil, Khalilullah, he was very wealthy to the point that his livestock crowded his town. وكذلك لوط عليه الصلاة والسلام وكثير من الأنبياء عليهم الصلاة والسلام والجم الغفير من الصحاب. He said, likewise Lut alayhi salam. He was also wealthy, and many of the prophets, as well as a large numbers of the companions. وإنما صبروا عند العدم ولم يمتنعوا عن كسب ما يصلحه. ولا من تناول المباح عند الوجود. They only showed patience when they had nothing, but they did not avoid earning what was beneficial, nor did they refrain from using what was permissible when available. وكان أبو بكر رضي الله عنه يخرج للتجارة والرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم حي. Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu, Sayyiduna Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu, used to go for trade, used to go for trade to buy and sell during the life of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. وكان أكثرهم يخرج فاضل ما يأخذ من بيت المال ويسلم من ذل الحاجة إلى الإخوان. Most of the companions would spend the extra amount that they received, they would spend it, and they were spared from the dhul. Dhul could be translated as humiliation, but what it means, it's not something sinful to beg if one is begging rightfully, if one is in need. But many people do not want to do that. So perhaps you could say they were protected from the perceived embarrassment of begging or needing others. The upright person avoids seeking or avoids assistance from the public or from others, and only accept from certain people. وقد كان ابن عمر رضي الله عنه لا يرد شيئا ولا يسأل. Ibn Umar رضي الله عنه, Abdullah رضي الله عنهما, would never refuse a gift because the Prophet would not refuse عليه الصلاة والسلام. Yet he would never ask also. Ibn Umar رضي الله عنه. Ibn al-Jawzi said, وإني تأملت على أكثر أهل الدين والعلم هذه الحال. He said, and I have observed this state among many religious and knowledgeable people. فوجدت العلم شغلهم عن المكاسب في بداياتهم. In their early days, their studies occupied them from earning a living. فلما احتاجوا إلى قوام نفوسهم ذلوا وهم أحق بالعز. But when they later needed to provide for themselves, they became, you could say, very needy. Someone wanted to say, they may say humiliated, though they are the ones most deserving of honor. He said, I observed this state amongst many religious and knowledgeable people. In their early days, their studies occupied them from earning a living. But when they later needed to provide for themselves, they were not able to. They had to beg. And that pushed them away, distanced them from engaging in their religious knowledge and teaching the religious knowledge. When they were in fact, so they were made to seem lowly in society, when in fact they are the ones who are more deserving of honor. He said, لما احتاجوا إلى قوام نفوسهم ذلوا وهم أحق بالعز. وقد كانوا قديما يكفيهم بيت المال فضلات الإخوان. فلما عدمت هذا الأوان لم يقدر متدين على شيء إلا ببذل شيء من دينه. وليته قدر فربما he said فربما تلف الدين ولم يحصل له شيء. In the past, the public Muslim treasury, Baytul Mal, or the excess generosity of the Muslim Brotherhood, the Muslim brothers, was enough for him. In the past, you take as an example the Ottoman Empire. In the Ottoman Empire, they had so many scholars because people weren't afraid to become a scholar. Parents were not afraid to prepare their child for scholarship because the Ottomans had such a system that guaranteed safety for the scholar, for the learner, the scholar, and his family. So the Ottomans, these Sunni Muslims, these Maturidis and Ash'aris, they would take from every other household a child and pay for this child's schooling. And then train this child to be a teacher. And then after that, to be a mufti. And then after that, to perhaps even be Shaykhul Islam. The Ottomans freed up their scholars such that they would not have to think about earning money because the time they would have spent to earn money would have been time away from the Islamic knowledge. Time away from the Islamic knowledge meant that they would be weaker. Who would the people go to ask for judgments? You want to ask the scholar for a judgment, he says, look, I'm at work. I'm working. Why are you working? Oh, because I need to earn a living. The Ottomans recognized that. So they freed the scholars from work and had them engaging in learning first and then teaching the masses. They even provided housing for their scholars and their families. The scholar had a wife and children, they would provide for them. They would pay for the education of their children. Because usually the father owns, the father earns, but the scholar is busy in his scholarship, teaching people. So Al-Uthmaniyun, rahimahumullah, they recognize this, that we need to take care of our scholars and their families so that we can get the most out of them, so we as a community can benefit. So they would pay for the schooling of the children of that scholar. And if the scholar died, then they would provide for a dawla, the government, because that person was a scholar, they would provide for his widow, and they would provide for his children until they became pubescent and learned and were able to provide for themselves. Why? Because this person was a scholar. Sheikh Abdullah, rahimahullah, he said that in Harar, a person is picked from every household, not every street, not every area or every town, no, every single house, one person is picked and sent to go and learn the Islamic knowledge. How is it where you are? Subhanallah. Ibn al-Jawzi said, in the past, the public Muslim treasury, which is known as Baytul Mal, or the excess generosity of the Muslims, they would be enough for this scholar. He said, but when that disappeared at this present time, he said, no religious person can obtain anything without sacrificing some part of his religion. Meaning, no person is able to make anything except that they would have to do that at the expense of something else that they could have been doing, like authoring a book, or engaging in memorizing the Quran, or teaching somebody, or resolving a matter between two people, a dispute that requires Islamic knowledge. He said, no religious person can obtain anything without sacrificing some part of his religion, even if that sacrifice is the time that they could have spent learning, teaching, authoring, correcting people. But that's been taken up now by what? By having to worry about earning. And even then, he may not succeed. Ibn al-Jawzi said his religion may be lost, meaning he lost out on a lot of good that he could have done. And he may still, despite losing that, he may still gain nothing. Ibn al-Jawzi said, فَالْوَاجِبُ عَلَى الْعَاقِلِ أَنْ يَحْفَظَ مَا مَعَهُ. Therefore, it is incumbent upon the wise person to preserve what he has. وأن يجتهد في الكسب ليربح مداراة ظالم أو مداهنة جاهل. The intelligent person, the wise person, must preserve what he has and must strive to earn a livelihood. Why? So he may be able to placate an oppressor. Placation al-mudara is like appeasement. دارهم ما دمت في دارهم. Keep them at arm's length, if you will. Make it seem as though you're with them, but you're not really with them because you have that safety net. So protect what you have so that you can placate an oppressor or appease an ignorant person. ولا يلتفت إلى ترهات المتصوفة الذين يدعون في الفقر ما يدعون. He should not be swayed by the ramblings of the so-called Sufis, who make all sorts of claims about poverty. There's a bit here right now that I'm going to miss, but I will come back to it, inshallah. He finished this chapter by saying, as for the one who works to be the giver, not the receiver. So he's encouraging people to work, to have a living, and a living like the prophets did. The one who gives charity, zakah, and donating, and not the one receiving it. He said, this is from the ranks of the courageous and virtuous. Whoever reflects on this will understand the nobility of wealth and the dangers of poverty. And we'll stop here. Let's say La ilaha illallah and as-salah ala nabi. La ilaha illallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Barakallahu fikum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.